Okay, this is the third quarter 2015 market report for Washtenaw County. And the good news is, as we've been saying all year, trends are consistent. The market is very strong. Michigan has the advantage of being really leading the Midwest in terms of economic growth, one of the best in the country, and Washtenaw County specifically has the advantage of being probably the strongest county in Michigan. Maybe Kent County is close in terms of growth, but certainly from an economic stability and comfort standpoint, Washtenaw is leading the pack. And that, from a housing standpoint, housing tends to follow economic growth rather than lead it. But we're seeing good things in income. We'd like to see incomes rising faster, but overall they're going up. Jobs, we're ahead of jobs. The peak job growth, peak job level in Washtenaw in 2006, we're actually ahead of that now. And low interest rates, and finally inventory starting to come back into the real estate market, which are giving some buyers some choice. And actually we're surprised, quite frankly, that the housing market has been as strong as it has been, considering how many sellers were sort of put off the sidelines because they were waiting for home equities to return so they could actually buy. And also there weren't a lot of homes to sell, so they're sort of trapped. Even if they wanted to sell, they didn't have a house to buy. And right now we're seeing inventory starting to return. Now it's mainly in the upper end of price ranges for Washtenaw County. We're starting to see inventories rise a little bit. And that's giving choice, and that's allowing sellers to sort of release that pent-up inventory. So it's all good news. Now what that means, though, is that there'll probably be an imbalance in listing inventory. Recoveries don't rise in a straight line. They sort of roll up and down. So we'll go through a period, we think probably coming up next year, in the fall this year and into next year, that inventories will probably start rising faster than sales. And if you look at price segments in Washtenaw, the 0 to 250,000, 250 to 500, 500 above, you look at those three segments. The up to 250 segment, we're still seeing inventories decline and sales actually rising. But if you get underneath that a little bit, you see that at least the last couple of quarters, inventory is starting to rise a little bit. So sellers are seeing the good news that there's equities and starting to move. You go to the next price range down the middle tier of 250 to 500, and clearly we're seeing inventories rise there. But we're also seeing sales rise even faster. So we think that'll probably settle a little bit, but it's good news that we're seeing sellers reacting to that, putting their homes in the market. In the upper end price range, the $500,000 or above, inventories are rising actually faster than sales. Sales are ahead of last year a little bit in that price range, but inventories are much higher. So certainly in that price range, and even in the middle price range, sellers are going to feel like the market is slowing, and in fact for them it is. There's more competition, and we're seeing values flatten out quite a bit, particularly in the 400 to 500 and above. We're seeing values flatten, and actually in Oakland and Macomb and Wayne counties, we're actually seeing in that upper end values decline a little bit. We haven't seen that in Washtenaw yet. I'm not sure that we will, but there's a possibility in the upper end that we'll see values, the inventories rise enough at that price range that values might actually decline a little bit. That's temporary, that's not a long-term trend. It's just a matter of balancing supply and demand. Don't expect to see that trend in the lower price range. It's just too many buyers out there in the marketplace looking for listing inventory that hasn't quite risen yet. But we do think going into 2016, we said 2015 and 16 is sort of the year of the inventory rise. We think that there'll be a release of that seller demand. They've been waiting, sitting on the fence for a long time. And of course, with credits easing a little bit for first-time home buyers, we're seeing that pent-up activity, buyer activity, starting to slowly get into the market as well. So all activity levels that we see point to good news going into the fall and into the winter. Buyer demand is showing actually the same or better than last year, with maybe more plentiful listings as well. We think that will be a good combination for strong activity. Sellers need to be aware of, though, that watch the inventories, because as inventories rise in their market segment, they have to be conscious of being priced correctly. There's a pretty good chance that, particularly in the upper end for Washtenaw, sellers will find themselves overpriced going into the fall and winter compared to the spring prices, so they have to make sure they adjust accordingly to attract attention. But overall, still great news for the first 3 quarters of this year. Thanks.